Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel Nonconformist Conscience and also the web page of the same name. This week, there is quite a bit going down astrologically, especially in regard to our relationships, our relational needs, and that is dealing with our own inner needs, and if you're in partnership with others' needs as well, or just in your regular relationships. It doesn't have to be romantically linked. We have Pluto square Venus this week, and this is happening right before Venus enters the sign of Taurus. And whenever Venus enters the sign of Taurus, Pluto will still be squaring Venus, just in an out of sign square. So what is Pluto in Capricorn squaring Venus in Aries indicating? Pluto in Capricorn is all about us being able to understand what it is to be our own authority in our life, how we take responsibility for ourselves, and how we take responsibility for our choices. It's also about looking at the conditioning factors, the conditions that we have around ourselves in regard to what our family systems or society or religion has conditioned us to believe or to value or conditioned us about our own intrinsic needs. Venus in the sign of Aries says, go out into the world and create action so that way you can understand yourself more fully. If you're sitting and you're not doing anything to understand yourself, Venus in the sign of Aries has been saying there needs to be action created in order for you to understand yourself on a deeper level. And with this square happening between Pluto and Venus, Pluto is ruled by Saturn in the sign of Pisces now. And so this is getting us to really understand what our ideals are, what our expectations have been or conditioned to be, and the dissolving of our conditioning that is no longer in resonance with us. And with it being a part of this Pluto-Venus square, it's having us look at our idealistic expectations within our own relationships. So looking at the parameters within our relationships where we're, creating or outsourcing external sources of validation instead of finding it within, or having experiences of, I'm in this relationship and it's checked all these boxes and this is it. Like I thought that there would be more to this. I thought I would feel more fulfilled. And the purpose of this happening is so that way it can nudge us to go out and to understand this more fully as a way to dissolve these old types of conditioning factors. And it also helps us to understand more natural principles and values that are more in alignment with whom we are, and to take responsibility for understanding that, for understanding our own conditioning. Pluto is also square the nodes, with the resolution being the south node in Scorpio, being ruled by that Pluto. So there's this need to really get to the bottom of our emotional and psychological dynamics of where we have and haven't held ourselves accountable or been in responsibility, where maybe we've made wrong judgment calls, and now there's a need to understand what is right and what is wrong for us specifically on a very personal level. Pluto square Venus this week is really wanting us to understand our autonomy, that we are not half of a person, half of a soul. We are whole. There's a whole and a fullness already within our being. And there needs to be action created for us to understand this timeless principle, and then to apply it within ourselves. So Venus at the time of this square is going to be ruled by Mars and Gemini. So choices can come up for us to make in regards to how we're inwardly relating, and in particular, our relationships. Are you in a relationship where you guys are both autonomous? Or are you stuck in a loop of only feeling about yourself if your partner is meeting your expectations and your needs? How can you go out into the world and make choices that help you feel courageous, feel powerful, because you're being able to meet your own needs instead of relying on others? So Pluto square to this Venus is really this call to action to do just that, to act on what it is that we're needing to act on as a way to perpetuate the continuation of dissolving old delusions and ideals in regard to our own relational needs. And it's really this call to understand more deeply about ourselves by taking ourselves, our own accountability and responsibility, grabbing it by the reins and getting after it. You know, your relationship to yourself is only something that you can control. No one else can do that for you. There's a need to act on the desires that we have and be responsive in that and reflect on those and see what is right and what is wrong in this combination of a conversation going on astrologically. We also have on the 16th, we have this Mercury, Neptune, and Sun conjunction in the sign of Pisces that is squaring Mars in the sign of Gemini. And so there can be this understanding that comes intuitively about what choice to make, especially if it's coming from a sincere place. There can also be a little bit of nebulous energy or confusion revolving around what should one do. But with this planetary conversation happening, there is a lot of healing and compassion and grace that can be promoted when one taps into their intuition and understands what is right and what is wrong for them, especially as this Pluto square, the nodes and Pluto square Venus is occurring. More than anything, there is a call to really look at and get to the bottom of where we might have had hidden motivations in the past or perpetuated manipulations within the cycles of our relationships. Like, this is a week where one can really get to the bottom of, why did I enter into partnership with someone? What was really the root of it? Was it because I was seeking validation outside of myself? And I've been conditioned to think that the only way I can feel good about me is if my value is put into whether or not I can be in a relationship. For some, this can be a week where they're understanding that maybe they don't want to be in partnerships anymore because they are experiencing the truth of the reality or the situation that is occurring within their relationship. Especially with the Sun, Neptune, Mercury conjunction, one can really come into this fuller understanding of the truth that's occurring. And then the need with Pluto square Venus and square the South Node is to get to the bottom of why we made these choices in the past and how can I now make a correct choice, a correct judgment. And this can only be done through the reflection of understanding this and really looking at and asking oneself, what do I need? What do I value? Is this in alignment with who I am, or is this in alignment with what I've been taught I should be? This is a week where new desires can emanate and come to the forefront that can really promote healing. And so reflecting and having discernment is a really big call for this week, to understand these dynamics, to get to the root of this, and then to allow the healing to occur, to not get caught up in self-defeating or a victim consciousness state of where one feels that stuck I did something, I made an incorrect choice in regards to this, and now I feel like, what can I do now? Like, where am I going to go with this now? If this realization hits you, have compassion for yourself, because this is what evolution is. I really love thinking about evolution in this sense, especially, we know, especially through Jeffrey Wolf Green's teachings, that relationships and understanding our essential needs within relationships is really something that helps us evolve. There's also lessons in understanding our essential needs within our relationship to self and in relationship to other. And this is this week where one can really come into a deeper understanding about these types of dynamics within their partnerships or within their inward relationship to self. And the reflection I have about evolution is especially with Pluto and Capricorn, or people who have a lot of Capricorn or a really strong Saturn in their chart, there can be this self-defeating thinking of, well, I was doing great, and then I messed up, and now I've got to start all over again. That's not really how evolution works. And there's this function of being stuck within our own hypocrisy that can occur with Pluto, especially at this 29-degree mark of Capricorn, of feeling hypocritical of self. Like, I made this choice and I have really been judgmental about it in the past. The thing about evolution is that you're evolving whenever you can reflect in a very Capricornian type of way and look up from the place that you've climbed in life and be like, yeah, I'm no longer that person. And guess what? I don't ever have to be that person again. And so this is a week to really come into understanding and forgiveness and compassion of self, of where we've come from, and really to honor that this is a journey. It is a marathon and not a sprint. And the value is in the effort, that each step that we take is not null and void whenever we feel like we're sliding down instead of climbing up. Each one of those is just such a gift. And this is what this Pisces energy brings to us, is understanding the gift in the present moment. And to also be able to reflect on where we've come from and to really honor and thank ourselves that I'm no longer who I once was. And I'm so grateful for that. And I feel like I can empower myself and make different choices, and I can enact my own authority, and I can understand what is right and what is wrong for myself. This is a week where all of this can kind of surface and come up to the forefront, so that way we can really deal with these deeper things that are wanting to surface. So today, Venus is going to, it's the 16th, by the way, I want to say that. Today, Venus is still square Pluto. Venus is currently at 29 degrees of me making this video in the sign of Aries. So it is in this square with Pluto. And she is about to enter the sign of Taurus. And she's entering the sign of Taurus, which is where she is at home. And this transit of Venus ingressing into Taurus and being here really reflects a time where we can cultivate a deeper relationship with self and to understand our essential needs, our essential values stemming from those needs, and the opportunity to create new truths about ourselves as we discover these new needs and values. This is also represented by Chiron being in a conjunction with Jupiter. So there's a lot of healing around how we have felt wounded in the past and our relational dynamics of not being autonomous. And while we are cultivating and understanding and getting to the bottom of these really Plutonian dynamics, as Pluto is square to Venus and square to the South Node, being its resolution, there is a lot of energy that helps and promotes a deeper understanding about where we have come from, what our conditioning has really, how it is manifested in our lives whenever we weren't aware of what exactly our conditioning was. And as we understand this more deeply and we do the Pluto, looking at the resolution node of the South Node in Scorpio, we can really have a time where we want to go into the cocoon to really understand and to make friends with these pieces of ourselves in the past, of where we have abandoned ourselves and didn't even know it, because we were going with the status quo of what we had been conditioned to think and value and need. And as we are able to understand this and come to a deeper understanding about it, we can then dissolve the ideals and the expectations and the externalizations of our value, and have this healing come forth and really promote and cultivate this deeper relationship to self right now, especially as Venus is entering the sign of Taurus. She will also she's entering a balsamic conjunction to that North Node. So as we have this willingness to look at the deeper layers within about the choices we've made, where we haven't made correct judgment or been responsible or autonomous and lost sight of who we were, especially with Ceres being in this picture in conjunct Pluto's ruler, Saturn, we're able to look at our idealisms in the past where really it perpetuated an instance where we abandon ourselves by taking on the values and the needs and the conditioning factors that have resulted in displaced emotional needs and displaced emotions. So this is a time to really cultivate an inner relationship with self, to understand one's natural values that are stemming from a place of source and not society, and understanding that as we have the willingness and the courage to dig deep, do the soul excavation that Pluto is wanting, that is the first step of taking responsibility for self in your relationship to self. And as you do that, you cultivate new values and new needs that are put into place as you are expelling the old conditioning factors that really have no resonance with whom we are on a soul level. But we have to do this deep inner Plutonian Scorpionic work to get there. So Pluto is going to sextile Mercury on the 18th as well. And so this can really help us to understand what it is that we're needing to learn as a way to cultivate this autonomy that we are all wanting to have. Saturn is also going to be sextiling Venus the day before that. And so what both of these conversations denote is that the things that we're coming to understand about ourselves can actually easily be integrated if we have the willingness to take responsibility for that own inner work. And through understanding that, we get to understand what our needs and our values are on a deeper level, and to continue this healing journey that promotes a radical alteration of how we're inwardly relating, how we are doing relationship with self. Pluto and Capricorn, more than anything, wants us to dive into the emotional body. You cannot become emotionally validating of self and become a natural authority unless you are willing to dive in there and to explore the emotions of when you've been hurt, where you've been hurt, your part in that, what choices led up to that. Were you denying what is intrinsic to you at the expense of keeping a relationship? Were you sacrificing your own needs in order to be in a relationship? Were you sacrificing yourself to be in friendship? It's looking at all of these dynamics and really holding oneself responsible and accountable for those choices as a way to really start to emotionally validate oneself. It's like the little engine that could, right? Like, I'm going to truck into these emotions. I'm going to dive in full force. I can be really scared, but I can make friends with them. And I always say you have to feel it to heal it. And this is a week that says, feel it to heal it. So much good can come from this, from looking at the trauma that we've endured, from where we felt like we didn't have a place in the world, if that's you, or where we denied ourselves joy and love because it didn't align with what we were conditioned to think or to believe. This is a week where understanding where this denial has happened can really help emotionally validate you, can cultivate a natural authority, and helps us all to become more self-sufficient by creating a inward relationship with self that is rooted in autonomy. So on the 19th, Mercury is going to enter Aries. So if you've been feeling confused about something, or you are wanting to have a conversation with someone, as Mercury enters Aries, a deeper understanding and the courage can surface to have the conversations that are needing to be had. This is also happening while Mercury is opposing Ceres. So there is a opportunity for all of us to reclaim where we felt an imbalance, or where there hasn't been equanimity within our relationships, and also talking about something that needs to be talked about. If this is you, have the conversation. Leading up to this, there is a lot of information that can be imparted on us to allow us to understand what needs to be said. The key is to be responsive and not reactive, and to not abandon oneself if the conversation gets uncomfortable. That it is okay to stand in one's truth and to own who one is and what our intrinsic values and needs are. This opposition is really about throwing off the inability to have the conversations that can help perpetuate equanimity in relationships. Now, if you are someone who does have a conversation with someone, do not have expectations. Do not be attached to the expectation of how that's going to occur. With all of the Pisces energy occurring, it is being reflected that there is a need to look at the truth, to not be attached to the outcome. You can't be attached to, if I finally get the courage to say this, this is going to work out in my benefit. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but there you will understand the truth of your situation at the end of it. And then from that, with Mars then being the ruler of Mercury, new choices can come up for you to make that help you come back into alignment with oneself. And so this is a week for healing and for courage and a willingness to go very, very deep. So that way, this radical alteration of how we are inwardly relating can come into fruition. So it's really interesting that at the end of this week, Venus is going to be in a tighter orb to the North Node. So it's the ruler of this North Node now, and it's in the same sign, but it's going to be opposing the South Node in Scorpio that is going to be square this Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn. This is such an emphasis on, if you are wanting to create inner security, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, you are going to have to take responsibility for yourself and your prior choices, and to get to the bottom of why. What are these emotional dynamics that have led to this point in time? What is going on in your life? What conversations need to be had? What do you need to take a deep dive into your psyche to understand about yourself, so that way you can expel the old conditioning factors, the old conditioned values, needs, beliefs, all the BS, very scorpionic Plutonian word there. And as you do that, it's like making room for a new way of being to come into fruition within. So to me, this week is super beautiful. It speaks to so much healing. For some, this can be a week of experiencing disillusionment. And experiencing disillusionment, I'm so grateful that Jeffrey Wolf Green talked about this, because I am someone who definitely has experienced this a lot in my past, but how he reflects on it is that it creates a readjustment or a realignment that is necessary. And so if you are in a partnership and something is happening and you are feeling disillusioned and the truth is surfacing, honor the truth of what is occurring. This is not a time to be Pollyanna. This is a time to honor what is occurring, because when we do, the realignment and readjustment of coming back into oneself and understanding oneself more deeply can happen and to come into fruition. So I just want everyone to have compassion for themselves as they are working with these energies and really doing a deep dive into this. I have had clients this week who have already felt this. That are making choices in their relationship that they felt like they couldn't make prior, and some of these are really lovely choices. There are things that are promoting healing within their partnerships while promoting autonomy within their relationships. This is a week that if you're in a relationship and autonomy has been lost, or you feel enslaved to that relationship in some way, there is a need to really cultivate self-security. And that is something that can start to be done this week. And it just takes a willingness to really pull back the curtain and to look at one's inner dynamics. And it can be so hard to be honest with oneself about oneself or about what is occurring. But there's so much beauty that happens afterwards. It can feel so confusing and disillusioning in that moment. And if this is you, like, I want you to hold on and continue to understand that there are deep, beautiful teachings, and that this is actually a time that it can not feel so nice for some people, but it's a time that can help us realign back into our inner awareness and to really gain our own sovereignty back. For others, like I said, I have clients who I can give an example. I have this couple that I saw this week who were really exploring the dynamics of codependency and relationships, and how codependency can create a situation of feeling enslaved into the relationship, whether that be sexually or a denial of sexuality. And so they've been really looking at and getting to the bottom of this type of thinking and where the conditioning occurred. And they have really come together because they want to both feel like whole people who aren't relying on each other, who get to just be there and be happy and spend time with each other because they like to spend time with each other, but still have their own autonomy. And so this is kind of the things that I'm seeing as this astrology has been coming up. I've seen, the more disillusioning experiences, and then I've seen the more healing experiences. But both of these denote people doing a deep dive into their psychological conditioning and their emotional nature, and what is happening as they've been having the willingness and the courage to do that. They are finding their autonomy. And to me, it is so beautiful. So this is my spiel this week, and I hope you all have enjoyed it, and I hope that it resonates. And this is a time that we are really being able to understand how our conditioning has affected us in the past. And this is such a beautiful time where we're able to really understand more natural principles and truths about ourselves, as long as we have the courage to dive deeply within. So cultivate that this week. If you haven't been, start that journey. Really foster this inner relationship with self. It helps foster a deeper connection with source as well. In my experience, the first thing that ever got me to really start to know God was by knowing myself, by not abandoning myself. And through that, it helped me trust my inner voice, which is such a Taurus dynamic. And that in turn helped me to trust source in a deeper way, that I am, as long as I have a sincere intention and I'm coming from a place of sincerity and love and compassion, all else will fall into place, even if it's not what I thought it would look like. And so that is understanding that we should not try to control the outcome or control what our expectation is going to be, to just allow one to go with the wave, to go with the river, to go with the current of life. And if we are honoring ourselves and we're doing it with intentionality and sincerity, everything will work out in the end. And so I hope that everyone has a beautiful week, and that they experience the healing that is wanting to surface at this time, especially in regard to their own inner relationship with self, and also healing their own relational dynamics with others. Have a beautiful week. Thank you so much.